Good afternoon and welcome to the first meeting of the Communities, Parks and Leisure Policy Committee. Nice to welcome members, officers and members of the general public. The gallery is actually empty, but I'm sure we have some on the webinar. Thank you. My name is Richard Williams. I'm the chair of this meeting. I also represent Stannington Ward. What I'd like to do is start off by reading a few housekeeping notes. The meeting is obviously open to the public. We have one question which will be answered. Please could I ask you to put your mobile phones to silent so we're not disturbed. I understand there is no fire test planned for today, so if the alarms go off, please make a swift but controlled exit, and our assembly point is Tudor Square. Could I please ask each of the committee members to introduce themselves? I'm going to start with my deputy chair.
My name is Covid, Councillor for Wood House and Deputy Chair of this committee.
Sue.
Councillor Sue Alston and represent Fulwood Ward.
Peter Price, member of Shire Green Brightside.
Councillor Karen McGowan, Burley Ward.
Councillor Tony Downey, Mosborough Ward. Councillor Anne Hooper, West Ecclesfield Ward.
Bernard.
Councillor Bernard Little, Walkley Ward.
Marianne.
Councillor Marianne Elliott for Gleadless Valley Ward.
Thank you very much. And could I now ask the officers, if we start with David and work round that way?
I'm David Hollis, Assistant Director, Legal and Governance.
Good afternoon, I'm John McElwraith, I'm the Executive Director for People Services.
My name's Ryan Keyworth, I'm the Council's Director of Finance and Commercial Services.
Lorraine Wood, Head of Communities.
Ruth Bell, Head of Parks and Countryside.
Ellie Fraser, Service Manager for Colonial and Bereavement Services.
Good afternoon, I'm Rachel Marshall and I'm Principal Committee Secretary working in Democratic Services.
Thank you very much. Before we start on the agenda proper, I just would like to make a quick observation. Clearly this is our first meeting. It's the start of a new way of doing things at Sheffield. I have had the advantage of watching a few of the other committees. I think they all very much felt that it was a good, important stage to go through. As ourselves, we have an incredibly broad portfolio, and presentations by the officers later on will demonstrate that. We're going to have to make some tough decisions, but hopefully I think the decisions we make will have a real and direct impact on residents in Sheffield. Thank you. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, we do have one apology, and that is from Dawn Shaw, Director of Libraries, Learning Skills and Communities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Item 3 is exclusion of the press and public. I don't believe there are any items that makes that relevant. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations of interest on the items we're going to cover today? Councillor Alston.
Thank you. I don't think this is really a formal declaration of interest, but I am a practising midwife, and the item number, I can't remember, 10 on the agenda, I don't have any actual influence over any decisions made by the midwifery service directly, so I don't think it actually is prejudicial, but I just want to, for the sake of openness, tell people. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any comments, David?
Yeah, I don't think that's anything that formally needs to be declared, but it's fine that it's noted.
Thank you. Right, we can then move on to public questions and petitions. We don't have any petitions, but we do have one question.
Thank you, Chair. I will be reading this question out on behalf of the person that's asked it, which is Janine Lawson. Our question is about tram lines and securing the best arrangements with local residents and businesses for the most successful possible event. You may be aware that improving understanding and practical arrangements between festival organisers and the local Hillsborough community is a long-standing concern. A number of different local people and groups have made considerable efforts to secure better relationships and improvements in arrangements for tramlines this year. We've been making little headway overall, for example, being given blanket general reasons why things can't happen. We feel sure that improved arrangements can be put in place to ensure tramlines is successful for all and based on the learning from previous years. So, and as a matter of urgency, how can this committee help Hillsborough residents and local businesses secure improved arrangements for this summer's Tramline Festival, in particular over the issues of festival re-entry for local residents and helping ensure the local community and businesses are better considered over the festival period? We are looking to make sure that there are specific and practical improvements on last year that can be arranged and implemented. We would suggest that re-entry be allowed until 4 p.m, which would negate any concerns that the Safety Advisory Committee have surrounding antisocial behaviour, whilst allowing businesses to benefit from the festival and families to enjoy the event. We would further like to request that an urgent meeting be convened to discuss the matter given the limited timescales available. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. This question was received at 20 to 1 this morning, but we felt because of the urgency that let it be heard today. I don't have a formal response because of the time period, and I think also because it does cover possibly a number of different committees. So what I will do though is I note the question, I note the urgency, and I'll give a formal response as soon as I can.
I understand from councillors in Hillsborough that there have been meetings with the community, and so things, this is the culmination. This question is a culmination of quite a lot of extensive background community consultation. So please consider it carefully. I do support the recommendation here. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we do take it seriously. We're not just going to pay lip service to this.
Can you just clarify? Are they asking that nobody enters the ground after 4 o'clock? Did I misunderstand it?
Very briefly, because don't want to compromise anything. My understanding is at the moment, from last year at Tramlines, for Covid reasons, the government said you can't have re-entry after 4 p.m. At the moment, I believe that's being maintained, but obviously, as a parent, I can see some issues with that. But I think rather than try and speculate now, I'd rather get to the bottom of this.
Does re-entry mean re-entry, or can you go after 4 o'clock for the first time for the evening show?
I really don't know.
He's clarifying.
Of course. I'll go on to the item 6, which is the Community Parks Leisure Committee overview. This will be introduced by John and supported by his colleagues.
Thank you, Chair. Colleagues, members, this will be a presentation about the responsibilities of this committee in terms of communities, parks and leisure. You will be taken through a presentation by Lorraine and Ruth. The presentation will be shared with you, and in that presentation there is a lot of detail and a lot of breadth covering the responsibilities. We won't endeavour to cover all of that detail today. Maybe see it as a reference pack throughout the life of your membership with this committee. So we're going to focus on the vision for each of the service areas, the associated structure, so you get a sense of who are the right directors or colleagues to talk to should you have an issue outside of meetings, some of the achievements to date over the last year, and then specifically what the services are that this policy committee is responsible for. Lorraine's going to go first, and then she's going to hand over to Ruth. Thank you, Chair.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. I'll shout when I need the next slide. So our purpose, the purpose of Communities, Parks and Leisure, is to engage, empower, enable and seek active participation of residents and community organisations, to work with local communities and make positive contributions to their well-being and sustainability so that our neighbourhoods are great places to live and thrive for Sheffielders of all ages. Next slide, please. So, as John alluded to, this is the high-level structure for the community services. Ruth will cover parks and leisure and library services. So, John is the Executive Director of People Portfolio. The Director of Communities is Dawn Shaw. I am one of 3 heads of communities. The others are Jason Siddle, Carl Malooly, who takes up post on the 1st of August. That post is temporarily covered by Nick Hamilton. And then you've got the Head of Community Youth Services, who is Chelsea Renahan. And I'll go into more detail what areas we cover later on in the presentation. Next slide, please. So a few of the key achievements. 350 cases were supported with a team around the person. So a quick overview of team around the person. I'll give you a quick overview now. It is that we work with people where we pull all services together and we put the person at the centre of their plan to support them to achieve all the actions needed. We've also, our community support workers have also worked with over 1,500 people over the last year. We've had 23 residents of people accessing, 23,000 occurrences of people accessing family centres for midwifery and health visiting services, which has been a great achievement given that we were just opening up buildings post-Covid. So we've created a money support guide website in partnership with VAS and poverty support organisations, and this is a really fundamental website that helps residents. It shows them where to go to for financial advice. We've done significant work in Page Hall, making local services more accessible, and opened up a partnership house that every partner and service can use that are working in that neighbourhood. The Covid Recovery Fund, over 1.35 million, has been given to 68 voluntary and community groups to meet needs of their organisation arising from Covid. We've established 7 local area committees and have got all the officer support in place. We've got formal approval of the youth strategy for 22 to 25, and unfortunately a little circle's been missed off the slide. We've actually employed over 20 sustainable community officers to support the safety within communities. So these slides are more detailed, and as John explained, I'm not going to go into the detail. This is a reference resource for members. And I explained about the team around the person providing a multi-agency. Our community support workers and prevention workers provide direct support to individuals who are at risk of requiring social care or additional health support to remain independent and well and to improve their quality of life. There are lots of priorities that we want to go through. The Family Hub and Start for Life programme, which is going to be delivered by our family centres. You know what I need to point out is that we are already a UNICEF gold standard city for being baby friendly, and we are maintaining that award. So every person, every mother that gives birth in Sheffield gets a phone call from our service with information, advice and guidance and further support if they need it within 5 days of giving birth. So that's how we've got our gold standard award. And I've got a paper later on about the Family Hub and the Start for Life programme, so I'll go into further detail then. Community cohesion. This is all about supporting our communities to live well together across Sheffield. Now, I don't need to tell you that Covid highlighted that actually our communities work well together. They stand up and they support each other and help each other. And this is what community cohesion is all about. It's being kind. It's looking after your neighbour. And this is what we need to do. Asylum and migration. You'll be fully aware that Sheffield is a city of sanctuary, and we are applying for local authority of sanctuary as well. And we are supporting asylum seekers from every nation. Most recently, obviously, Ukraine. We've worked with the Afghans, and we're also looking at the Hong Kong nationals as well. So there is lots and lots of work going on in Sheffield for asylum seekers and refugees. Page Hall, I mentioned before, we have a small team in Page Hall that have been doing a fantastic job in improving the environment, antisocial behaviour, activities for children and young people. So we've got lots of work going on in Page Hall. Our voluntary sector liaison team looks at the grants we give out as a city and the priorities. We're going to review the grant aid over the next year. Community safety and safer neighbourhood service is all about what it says on the tin, community safety. So we lead on the delivery of the city's statutory and strategic partnership priorities for reducing crime and disorder, preventing antisocial behaviour, and prevent, that's coordinating the work of the council and partners to stop people becoming terrorists or supporting terrorism. Our local area committees, which you will all be fully aware of. So we've established 7 local area committees, and those committees have pulled together with residents a community action plan for their area. Each action plan has different priorities because it's relevant to each local area, and we will be delivering on those priorities over the next year. Community youth services. As you'll be aware, we have just brought these services back into the local authority, and we are looking at restructuring our service, but they will provide universal community youth services, such as youth clubs, detached youth work, targeted community youth services, which is referral based or has a statutory requirement around information, advice and guidance. And then we've got specialist community youth services, which focuses on high need and statutory requirements, such as young people who go missing from home. And they've got a lot of priorities over the next year. Right, Ruth, I'm handing over to you now.
Look, could I suggest actually that if any members have got questions about the community elements, we take them now. Tony.
Thank you. Yeah, community youth services, should I say. I was chair of the South East LAC last year, and it's something that we were really looking into because we found that a lot of the youth were not engaging. There was nothing for them to do, and I've noticed that they're trying to do something in every area now, in every ward. Can you give us an idea of what is actually happening in each ward? Because the ward that I represent in Mosborough, we've got one youth club, and that I think they have that twice a week. But I don't know where any other youth services are in that area, and I'm assuming that this is. I know this is something that Chelsea's working on, and she's trying to do her best to get everything going. But I do wonder sometimes where all these youth services are and what they're going to deliver. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tony. Yes, Chelsea is working on that. You're absolutely right, and she's currently looking at the whole youth service across the area. You're absolutely right. We will have 3 provisions in each ward, and there's an annual plan that will be out very shortly. But you must understand, we've also got 21 vacancies for youth workers across the city. And it is difficult to recruit youth workers, but we are trying to do that. So, but if Chelsea will get you the annual plan out as soon as possible so that you will see exactly where everything is across the areas.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hooper.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I could echo what Tony's just said. Certainly from the north, I mean, Tony was south east last year. Youth provision in the north is virtually non-existent. Nothing in West Ecclesfield ward at all. We're trying to set it up, and again, most of these things on these slides here are on our LAC plan. So we're trying to address them, but we need to move. I mean, you say there's 21 vacancies, but that's no good telling the areas and residents that there's 21 vacancies and we can't provide any youth provision. So we look forward to it. I know Councillor Terry Fox, leader, said that there would be provision in every ward. We're still waiting for that. We're actually setting up, hopefully from our LAC, a youth provision in High Green, which is an area of deprivation, and that will come out of the LAC. But most of the things on here are our priorities on the North LAC and probably all the other LACs as well. Community safety, parks and woodlands, youth services, everything is on our plan. How we achieve it, I don't know, but looking at this, there's enough for this committee to continue forever with it, with the work. It's a massive portfolio. But thank you very much for the presentation.
I have 2 people who wish to speak. Councillor Wood first, and then yourself.
Hi Lorraine, good to see you back and hopefully fully recovered. You mentioned grant aid reductions. As we all know, they are the lifeline for organisations like Citizens Advice, St Vincent's etc. We can, if not acting careful, just add to the general fund costs of the council.
I don't think I mentioned a grant aid reduction. I mentioned a grant aid review. So they're going to review grant aid, but you're right, Citizens Advice, they've never been needed more in the current climate. You're absolutely right, Councillor Wood.
Happy with that? Thank you. Councillor McGowan.
Yeah, thanks. It's coming back to the youth and what you were just saying about hard to recruit 2 vacancies, and I'm just wondering what that was that made it hard. Is it that we haven't got people in the community that's qualified? Is it the hours that we're offering? Is it the rate of pay? Is it if we're finding it difficult, is it something we need to review on what we're paying to get the staff?
It's a great question, and you might have noticed nationally there's been a reduction in the investment in youth services across the country, and a number of the national training providers have exited the youth work training programme. So part of what Chelsea is trying to do is map what we've got in terms of our own staff, what our partners in the VCF sector have in terms of their staff, identify the gaps, and she's talking to national organisations and training providers about how we recruit and develop a bespoke training programme for our own staff here in the city of Sheffield to grow our own, if you like, and support the improvement of youth work standards across the city. So it's not a quick fix, but it is a more sustainable, longer term fix. But it's been a very challenging environment across the country, not just in Sheffield.
Thank you for that information. Can I just come back then? So you've just said it's not a quick fix. So does this mean we're all expecting these 3 sessions in our ward, so that realistically that's not going to happen for about 6 months from the sounds of it? Is that real?
So I think it's about incremental increases. So as we get workers, we're deploying them straight into direct provision. The conversations are ongoing with our VCF partners to support them to recruit staff and develop staff. So we're doing both the immediate and taking the longer term.
You okay with that? Okay. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I mean, very, very quickly, absolutely echo the concerns about the youth service. We have nothing in our area, and I don't recall that we've ever had that I can remember. However, the question I wanted to ask was actually around the LACs. There's obviously been a big shake-up in terms of the staffing, and basically our LAC has lost the whole team, apart from one member, I think we've lost the whole team. When will we know who our new team are, and how quickly are we going to be able to engage with them in order to not delay the implementation of our LAC plans?
Very shortly, there's going to be a handover for the South West LAC. Nick stays in post until the end of July. Carl comes into post on the 1st of August. We can start some handover in the meantime anyway. And then Tanya, I think was a successful candidate, will be in post hopefully by the end of this month to do a proper and thorough handover.
Okay, and Councillor Little.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanting to know what this brief is for this committee. Does the community safety include road safety?
No, Bernard, it doesn't. Well, it does, but that's another service area.
Could you explain? So,
that's under transport.
right, okay. And my other question is about the LAC teams. I'm chair of Central LAC, and I'm aware that we've got, well, no resources for communications. So it's going to be very difficult to actually tell people what we're doing when meetings are going to happen, public meetings are going to happen. Is that going to be resolved?
We do have resources until the end of July.
Right.
We will also have access to communications whenever we need it, but as part of the handover of the resources, each member of the LAC, whether it's the LAC officer, the community services officer, or the LAC manager, will be able to update any Eventbrite details, websites, blogs, any social media platform. They will have the training to be able to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, another quick question on the LACs. It's gone out of my head now. I got it in my head and I should have written it down. I'll come back, Chair, when I remember what it was I wanted to ask. Okay, I'll write it down. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, well, thank you for those questions. There's no other people wishing to speak, so we'll try and keep Tony's question in the corner. Thank you for your report. What I would say is it's a big report that we only have had for a couple of hours. Clearly, when you read it properly, you're going to have a lot more questions. Please fire them through to the relevant officer. Perfect timing.
Thank you. The LACs were given £100,000 this year to spend on their war priorities. There was some confusion, I think, last year as to how much they will be getting ongoing. Is that subject to what the council's budget fits in with, or can you explain? We only knew £100,000 for the first year. Thank you, Chair.
I'll start it off if Ryan wants to finish it. Yes, you got £100,000 this year, and yes, it will be dependent on the council budget. Ryan, do you want to add anything to that? You're absolutely right. So.
Nothing to add, Chair. That's exactly right. Just a thing though, any underspend against that will be recommended to be carried forward. So it was 100,000 last year, but it does carry forward if underspent.
Thank you. Councillor Price.
Can I just seek your clarification? Is cemeteries coming into this bit? Because I'm
going to be talking about cemeteries shortly, yes.
We're going to get that sort of
yes.
right. I know the charges are, but just the policy, that's okay.
Okay, thank you. Well, that's the community side of our portfolio. I'd now like to move on to the parks, leisure and library side. So please,
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm going to cover parks, leisure and libraries, which parks, despite it not saying it on the tin, does include bereavement services. Just like with Lorraine, I'm not going to go through it in great detail. The information is there. What I am going to do is tell you who the key people are so you know who to talk to if you've got any questions. And obviously feel free to ask any questions here. I do need to say that I am Parks and Countryside. So if you have questions about libraries, leisure or business strategy, I don't want to guess at an answer. So if it's okay, I will take those away and come back with an answer later because my colleagues are far better placed to answer those than I am. Next slide, please. Just like our communities colleagues, we've listed a number of our achievements. In all honesty, this list, I'm sure like communities, started off at about 35 and we had to whittle it down just to make it presentable on a slide. But just a few things from our areas. 2,300 people have been engaged in planting over 14,000 trees across the city. An additional 300 tree surveys have been completed beyond our statutory site assessments, which is around 500 sites. So that's over 800 tree surveys conducted as a result of ash dieback. We have an exceptional network of friends of groups and volunteers who are interested in working in our parks and our cemeteries actually, and we've had thousands of volunteer hours contributing to the management of our sites across the city over the last year and in previous years. That continued throughout Covid. We've agreed a long-term management and investment strategy for sports, leisure and entertainment facilities, including consultation with over 2,300 residents to help shape the development of a new sports and leisure strategy for the city. We've supported the successful delivery of a range of projects, including the very important holiday activities and food programme, which is targeted at children receiving free school meals, and the This Girl Can project. We've launched the Sheffield Libraries app, which I can say I have used myself and it's absolutely brilliant. And also the Sheffield Home of Football Library, supporting accessibility. We've continued to provide order and collect book provision throughout Covid, online inquiries, events and activities throughout all of the lockdowns, and have now renewed the service offer with all of the libraries back to the pre-Covid, opening times. And our business strategy team has led the portfolio's corporate response through incident management throughout Covid, contributed to monitoring the activities listed within the one-year plan, and has also supported our portfolio leadership team throughout the business planning process, looking at budgets for 21-22. Next slide, please. So Parks and Countryside, this is my area, Parks, Countryside and Woodlands, along with a number of service managers. In lots of ways what we do is literally our title. We look after all of the green spaces in the city. I'm sure you all know how important parks are to everybody in the city. We manage those spaces. We manage sites on behalf of housing. We look after playgrounds. We undertake improvement projects within those parks. Accessing a range of funding to be able to improve different things within the park. And we look at also improving just people's experience of those green spaces. One of our key focuses is often a brew, a loo, a view and something to do. So literally having toilet facilities, having catering facilities, having something to look at and then ideally something to do while you're in that green space. Next slide, please. I've separated out Colonial and Bereavement services. That's myself with my colleague Ellie, who's going to talk to you later about bereavement fees. And that's because when you say Parks and Countryside, people don't automatically know that it includes cemeteries and the 2 crematoria that we have run by the council within the city. But Ellie and her team manage the 2 crematoria and 16 cemeteries across the city, and also the Medico-Legal Centre, which for those of you who don't know, it houses the offices of HM Coroner, 2 courtrooms and also the city's public mortuary, so undertaking some very important death services, as it were, for the city. And now I'm on to the bits that I know far less well, so this is going to get exceptionally headline, I hope that's okay. Sports, Leisure and Health is headed up by Tammy Barras and her team. They deliver a range of services and projects with the overall aim of making Sheffield a healthy and vibrant city where people choose to live, work and invest. The services support Sheffield's economy, improve vibrancy, attract investment into the city and improve the health and well-being of residents. That team includes it's sport, leisure and health, sport, leisure and physical activity, and also public health improvement principles, so looking at things like the food strategy and the tobacco strategy as well. Thank you. Libraries, everybody obviously knows what our libraries do and probably knows what the fantastic service they offer. That's headed up by Nick Partridge and his team. They provide the council's statutory public libraries. That is 11 hub libraries across the city. Central Library, literally across the road from where we are right now, and also the Home Library Service. They also look after the city's archives and the local studies collection, and they run the council's records management system. They also support 16 other libraries that are run by volunteers rather than by council staff. And then last but not least in our area, business improvement and change is headed up by Darryl Smedley. His team supports the whole of operational services portfolio actually, as well as the City Futures portfolio. They provide us with support around change projects, work around our IT, business application systems and data, resilience, and a whole host of other things. They're largely an internally focused service, but one that we absolutely couldn't do without. So that really was a whistle-stop tour. My colleagues can provide more information at a future committee if you think it would be helpful, but I'm happy to answer any questions or take them away if I can't answer them myself.
Well, thank you very much for that. Does anybody have any questions?
What proportion of the public health grant is currently allocated to this committee?
Quick answer, I'm afraid I don't know. Can I come back to you with that answer? Is that okay?
Councillor Little.
Yes, my question is, you have an outline of the next steps for tackling the for the nature emergency. How far has that got, and can we pursue it further?
Yes, absolutely. We can do so through this committee if you would like. We've started to pull together detail of, in particular, what it is that we're already doing and what our aspirations are. Myself and Rowan Longhurst, who is the service manager for Countryside and Woodlands, are going to talk to an internal group that we've got about how we might take that forward tomorrow, actually.
Thank you. And my second question is about, I noticed a reference to women's football in the city. I understand that Sheffield United women don't actually play within the boundaries of the city. I understand that they play in Chesterfield, or certainly outside the city. And can we bring pressure to bring that into the city? They are an excellent team. Thank you.
I'll ask Tammy to come back and talk to you about that, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Price.
Two questions. First one's on the burial site. I may be in the wrong place here, but as you probably know, there's a massive controversy at the Shire Green. Can you tell me where it's at? I'm getting some real earache from the community. Nothing's happening. There's been no discussions. Yet they've got this massive marble memorial that's being built. They claim with permission, and we claim not with permissions. And I just need to report back, that's all, Chair. First question.
In all honesty, what you read in the press is accurate. That is as far as we've gotten. So we have approached the family and we're just waiting to speak to them about it. To be clear, the family did have permission for a memorial. It's not right to say that they didn't have permission to do anything in that cemetery. They simply didn't have permission for a memorial of that size. But we are hoping to work with them to come to a solution. We are, though, aware that it is impacting on a large number of residents who've got loved ones buried within that cemetery.
The second question really is about sport, and I understand the pressure to increase participation and families, etc. I do hope we're not going to lose the support for the club structure, that's all. Particularly in swimming. People think that if you're in a club swimming, you're sometimes a pro, but a lot of kids go through that system of learning to swim properly. And I just hope just like footballers and cricketers, they need to play as teams, and it's not just a singular sport, that's all. So please don't forget the club structure in your deliberations.
I'll pass that back to Tammy, and I'll get her to get in touch with you to see whether you want to be updated on anything in particular, if that's okay.
Councillor Hooper.
Yeah, thanks. Looking through the priorities for parks, there's quite a lot on the large items, you might say, looking for new providers, etc. Has there been any assessment on parks pavilions? I can see the playgrounds are in, but the pavilions in the parks in some areas are really run down. In fact, they've been neglected for so many years now, they're almost ready for demolition, I believe, perhaps beyond repair. So have they been assessed, or are they going to be assessed?
I think it's fair to say that it's often done on a case-by-case basis, and that's how we often do improvements as well. When there's funding available, we tackle a particular park and a particular pavilion. But let me check back with property services to see whether any of the pavilions that are in a particularly bad state are part of any of the property services reviews of all of our assets that are taking place.
Give you one to start off with, that's Hanger and Bank.
Leave it with me.
Councillor Dan.
Thank you, Chair. School playing fields, I know they come under education. There's an anomaly there somehow, because sometimes the council, parks department, cut the grasses there, etc., etc. My concern at the moment is we've managed to stop off-road vehicles getting onto 2 playing fields in my ward. There's still another one, and I'm trying to work with partners to try and keep the cost down on that. Is there any help we can get from the Parks Department to help us to do this? Because it's just getting ridiculous with off-road vehicles now cutting, and youngsters wanting to learn to play football. They just can't play, especially in the cold weather when it's icy. There's divots with the car tyres, and it's just unplayable. Thank you, Chair.
I'm familiar with it because obviously you and I have exchanged a number of emails on the matter. It is a bit of an oddity. We do often cut the grass at cost for the schools. I'm familiar with the third one that you're talking about, and I understand a couple of my officers are due to attend meetings with you. Yes, there probably is support that we can give. We do need to be mindful of our budget situation, though. What we don't have is an endless budget to be able to do things on sites that we don't manage ourselves, because we can barely afford to run our own sites, in all honesty, in some cases. But there are probably things that we can do in particular to help him make sure that vehicles can't access it. It's what we've done on other sites, so yeah, absolutely, keep talking to us. And I know that one of my tree team is due to attend your next meeting.
Thank you. I've got 2 more people to speak. No, I've got 1 more person to speak. Then what I'd like to do is wrap it up, because we're getting very into detail, and this is meant to be an overview. I'm conscious of the clock is ticking. So Councillor Little.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you for your presentation. I'm very interested in developing the green spaces within our council estates, and, for example, Langsett. Is that in our programme of looking at how to improve green areas, right outside people's doors, on people's doorstep? Is that in the remit of this committee?
I think, in all honesty, probably not. I think that probably falls within housing. We maintain housing spaces on behalf of housing, so we cut the grass and do things, but it's at their request. But we are looking to work more closely with housing, so that some of the improvements that we've seen on park sites can then be translated onto housing sites.
Thank you.
Good question. Peter, final question.
Just a quick. Have we prioritised disabled access into our cars, into our parks? I've been getting requests about whether we're having a policy across the city about getting proper access for people in disabilities and wheelchairs. Yeah.
So wherever we do improvements, we do prioritise making sure that they are accessible if it is possible to be accessible. But we don't have a scheme looking at making all sites that are perhaps not currently accessible, because it takes a lot of funding. But on a site-by-site basis, yes, whenever we make changes, we do make sure that is one of the things that we do if we possibly can. There's an awful lot more that we'd like to do. A number of our playgrounds are not accessible at all. Yeah, I hope so. It's a really, really important cause.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the questions, and thank you for the reports. I think we're due to note item 6, which I think we've done. Again, I noticed that it was very short notice. There's a lot of detail in those reports, so if you've got further questions, and I'm sure you will have, please put them through to the officers. So thank you very much. Item 7 is the work programme, and I'm going to ask John McElraith to present.
Thank you, Chair. So a very brief introduction for you members. So this is a suggested work programme you have in front of you. It will develop further over the summer as we have conversations with both the Chair and Vice Chair of the committee. You will note that it is to be a standing item on your policy committee meetings, so you'll be able to shape it through those conversations at each meeting. And you'll also note in the paper that you have proposed items for the September meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm looking at questions. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thank you. And I have sort of looked through this obviously before I've come. I just wondered, because obviously some of these items will be part way through development, or, you know, maybe even sort of coming to the end of where we're at the end of ready to just make a decision. It would be really helpful if within this programme we could know where they're at. In particular, I'm thinking at some point we'll probably want a working group to look at some of these things, but if they're already well through development, that probably is less appropriate. So I think we just need a bit more idea of where we are, you know, where we are in terms of staging. Thank you.
Thank you. We can take that away, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Little.
Yes, at what point in, thank you, Chair, at what point in this process can we suggest extra items?
Thank you. It's my understanding that each meeting, each policy committee meeting will have the forward plan as a standing item, so you'll have a discussion about existing and proposed items at each committee meeting. Obviously, this is the first committee meeting, so as I've said, we'll work with the Chair and Vice Chair through the summer. For the September agenda, you've got a proposal there, and you can feed items through to myself, Chair and Vice Chair, through the summer months, if that's helpful.
Thank you, Chair.
If there's no other questions, Councillor Price.
Another specific one. Can you tell me where we're at with the Steel City ground? It's been leased to a club, I understand, the sports ground, but of course the pavilion was demolished, so they get changed in some horrible tin places, and there's girls in it. I just wondered whether there's a proposal to bid for Sport England money, because it'd fit in lovely for to get those grounds in full operation. I just wondered whether it's left to the club or whether your local authority's taking it on board yet.
I'll find out for you.
Okay, I actually have a question, if I may, but I'll defer.
Thank you. Just on the, you know, proposing things for future agendas, is this the forum to do it now? Because I know you said we can discuss it over the summer, but is it best to air stuff now if we want it put on for September?
Sorry, thank you, Chair. There's a pre-agenda meeting for each committee at which the agenda and future items are discussed. That is attended by the Chair, the Deputy Chair and the political lead from the party who isn't the Chair or Deputy Chair. So that's probably the best place to raise that, to get those things on the item. Because if you want something on the agenda, it's likely to need a report, so it will need officers to go away and work that. So that would be the best forum for discussion.
Okay, thanks.
Does that answer your question? Okay. My question is, under 2.2, you've called a sort of deduction programme for members. This is on page 13 of the report. When does that kick in? It's got lots of June and Julys.
I think some of the items are being worked through, but the specifics I'm not certain about. So if I take that away and communicate with yourself, Chair, is that okay as an action for myself?
Okay, well, if there's no further questions, then we'll say thank you for that, and we'll move on to Item 8, which is fee increases for bereavement services. And this particular item is one where we need a decision.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Ellie Fraser. I'm Service Manager for Colonial and Bereavement Services, and I'm here today for a decision on an increase to bereavement services fees and charges. I'm sure you'll have all read the paper, so I won't just repeat what it says. Ruth's already touched on that our service is responsible for the 2 crematoria in the city and the 16 active cemeteries. In terms of what we charge for, that is charging for cremation services and cremations and any related items. It's charging for burials, both full burials, ashes interments or niches, and it's any related grave costs associated with that as well, and our memorial offer as well. It is usual for us to increase our fees annually. Usually that's in line with inflation unless a specific paper is written and agreed separately. As a burial authority, we have the ability to charge as we think fit and proper. And the funeral market investigation also identified that we need to publish our charges and notified all funeral directors in the area at least 15 days in advance. Actually, good practice says that we book services in advance of that, and we wouldn't change the cost of something that's already been booked in. This year specifically, the Council's budget setting process has identified budget implementation plans and sort of savings attached to the service. But we're also seeing significant cost pressures as a service, as many other areas are. Namely for us, that's around the increase in fuel prices. In particular, we've had to move from red to white diesel because we are not deemed to be an agricultural service, and that's about twice the price for fuel. We've obviously seen a huge increase in utility costs, particularly with regards to gas. Our machinery costs are going up significantly. They also need significant modernisation, and we would love to be able to move to a more electric model, but that involves investment and infrastructure. And of course, our memorial offer, the actual cost of the supplies themselves are going up to us much greater amounts than the 4% we are proposing to increase by. So in preparation for making recommendations, we did some review work. We looked at what other core cities charge for their services and also what our surrounding local authorities were charging. I should note that the costs that are in this paper were looked at in February-March time, so they are before any April increases would be applied by other local authorities. Based on that research, what we would like to recommend, and the decision we're looking for today, is that we get approval to increase our fees by 4%. We do have a simple pricing model, we try to, so our prices are rounded, so it's 4%, rounded to the nearest £5, but of course to ensure that there's no disproportionate effect on any particular item, we would cap that increase at 5%. The work we did said actually on average that made an increase of 4.22% when you brought that rounding in.
Thank you. Do you have any questions? Councillor Brown.
Yeah, it just feels, it's all around cost of living crisis, and we're putting these fees up, and what support is there if people can't afford it? I know that you've looked in the quality impact, it says low-income families where the deceased has left no estate, but they might have left a little bit of something, but it might not be enough to cover, and the prices are going up, and it just makes me feel a bit uncomfortable, that's all, because I know everything's going up, and, you know, I just wondered, have we got anything, is there payment plans, what is there? It is difficult, and funeral costs are known to be quite expensive. We don't have a payment plan in place. That's not something that we are able to offer. It has been investigated and ruled out previously. In terms of support available to families, obviously it's different. If they're people who are in low income or in receipt of certain benefits, there is government support available to people, not directly through the local authority, but via the government directly. I think therefore, what the Qualities Impact Assessment tried to pull out is actually the people who are just above that will probably be the hardest hit, the people who haven't got the income to be able to afford it, but aren't deemed to be sort of poor enough to actually receive those benefits and grants.
Okay. Councillor Alston.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. I've got a couple of questions, sort of technical about the report, and then a couple of questions more generally. If I just ask the first two first, because that might help me. The first one is, what do you actually mean by exclusive burial rights? Maybe that should be obvious, but I don't actually understand the term.
No, that's fine. I only started in the service last year and it was news to me as well. So you believe when you purchase a grave, a plot, that you buy that plot and it belongs to you. That's not the case. You actually lease a grave and you lease the burial rights for that grave for a period of years. The nationally set amount at the moment is 50 years. It has changed over time, but so you would purchase the grave and the burial rights for that grave for 50 years. Many graves hold more than one person, usually it is two, so if you have somebody who's buried and you go beyond that 50 years but you want to bury somebody else in the same grave, you would have to extend the lease for that grave in order to do so.
That's roughly what I thought it was. I presume that's made clear to people at the time that they purchase it. My second question, the Children's Funeral Fund. Can I just ask, how long has that been around and is that government funding?
So yeah, the Child Funeral Fund was implemented in 2019 and it was recognised that all children or families of children should have the right to a full funeral irrespective of income. It's a national scheme, which means that we can in effect recharge the government for the cost of the funeral so that the family don't have to pay for it. You have to pay for any add-ons and any additions, but the price of the funeral itself is covered by the government scheme.
Thank you. Sorry, two more questions. The next one is about, are there any items not on this list? I'm asking specifically because I know about having to pay for things like plaques, which I can't see on the list. And are there any other items not on the list? And is that because they're charged in a different way?
So this report doesn't contain the full list of everything that we charged for. The only items that are specifically listed in the report are those that are as an exception to the change in pricing model outside of the 4% rounded up to the nearest £5 and capped at 5%. So yes, there are lots of items that are not included in the report that we charge for, including plaques.
Thank you. I should have read it more carefully. My last one, which is actually probably a more sensible question, is really just about the consultation. And I know you've put that the City Council is not required to carry out any consultation, but I just wondered how much feedback, if you like, do you get from via funeral directors, via individuals, and is that taken into account? Is that recorded? You know, is there some system whereby we actually look at what people are saying?
So the truth is, not as much as I would like to. Having come into the service last year, I'm aware that in the past we did have quite active consumer groups and forums that we would make with funeral directors, we'd make with particular community groups who used our services, and we also did feedback forms. I don't know at what point that stopped, but that has phased out. It's something I'm really keen to reintroduce, along with a number of other changes within the service, so we just have to plan into when that's going to happen. There are also other changes that are needed in terms of updating our policies and our sort of longer term burial strategy, and I think it's absolutely critical that we consult with people across the city when developing that. So therefore the only feedback that would be fed into this is that from surrounding authorities who we speak with and have a good network with, and the fact that our team do have a very open and regular dialogue with funeral directors just as part of their day-to-day work. So there is that sort of opportunity for us to receive feedback, and that is sort of fed in and acknowledged within the service.
Thank you for that. I'm presuming then there will be some further information coming to us at some point when you're developing the strategy.
I hope so, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Little.
Yes, thank you for your report. I'm very concerned about have we underestimated here by a lot the level of inflation? You know, that is going to go up and up and up this year, and because of budgetary constraints, could I suggest that would it be possible to have a report on the pressures you're under every, say, 2 months? I don't know what one officer would suggest is the best interval to report back, because you know, we've got to keep within budget. It would be useful to hear that.
Absolutely, we can do. You're right. When we started writing this, we were actually aiming for an April implementation date, and when we were looking at what the recommendation would be, it was around the inflation cost at that time. As we all know, things have changed and escalated, and we are having providers who are even now putting costs up where they hadn't anticipated having to do so. We obviously do manage our budgets every month, and we do forecasts every month. So at the moment, we're not forecasting a big anomaly in terms of a budget pressure or overspend. So I wouldn't want to, I imagine there's other areas that are having the same pressures, so I think it would like to be consistent with how everybody else would report, but I'm more than happy to feedback if that's what's requested.
Thank you. Perhaps that's a question at the end of this, the last item on this, in this meeting. Thank you.
Sorry, any other questions? Alan?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, my question really, I've got a couple. One relates to Bernard's regarding the increasing costs. As you say, it would normally be implemented in April. We're now in June, so perhaps, look, I don't know when it will be implemented, this, after today's decision, but we're a third of the year gone. So we're already a third of the increased cost down. And the increased costs are unknown at this moment, going up all the time. So just wondered if we may need to review it in perhaps 6 months' time. That's one question. The other question is regarding the comparisons for cremation. Looking down the major cities, we're in mid-range. But I'd ask a question about the lower cost in the private cremation at Grenoside. That's in my ward. A reasonably modern facility, and it's about 15% down on the council charges for cremation. Is there a reason for that you know? Is it because of the more modern, or is it because the Sheffield crematoriums are older, or and I don't know if the refurbishment programme from them as well. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, just to initially touch on the kind of the review, you're right, we are having cost pressures going up all the time, and I think we have got to review and keep an eye on how the cost of living increase is affecting what people choose to purchase and how much people choose to purchase. Obviously our service is heavily dictated on the death rate in the city as well. So we do need to review, we need to be mindful of it. One of the things I would like to do is a complete memorial review of what we offer. I think it's well overdue. I think it needs modernising, and I think it needs to be more responsive to the different cemeteries and the different things we've got to offer in that cemetery. So I would like to undertake that piece of work anyway. With regards to Grenoside, yes, they are cheaper. I think there's a number of reasons for that. Firstly, they pay their staff less. We know that because we've had people who have come to work for us. We do also have higher costs, so you're right, we have the City Road cremator replacement, so when City Road reopens, our cremators will be brand new and they will be very efficient, but we have a grade 2 listed building that in itself has quite high sort of upkeep costs. So I think as a council we just have higher costs associated to delivering the service anyway. I would like to believe we offer a better service, and I think if you speak to a lot of people locally, they would agree, but obviously everybody has their own opinion.
Thank you. If there's no other questions, I will go to the recommendation. The recommendation was to agree a general 4% increase, rounded up to the nearest £5 and capped at 5%, to bereavement services, fees and charges, alongside the specific changes listed below. Are we all agreed? That looks unanimous, and therefore that the motion is carried. Thank you. Item 9, Parkwood Springs lease update. Although it's under the agenda as a formal decision, this is purely a report for updating. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I was literally about to start by saying this is not an item for a decision. It's simply a verbal update on a project that we've got ongoing. For those of you who don't know, I'll just give you a little bit of background on on Parkwood Springs, a little bit about the project, and then just talk about some of the things that we're encountering and where we're up to at the moment. So Parkwood Springs is an active country park at the centre of Sheffield. It's 146 hectares of open space on the apparently sunny side of Don Valley. It's within a mile of the city centre, and it is actually unknown to a lot of people. The park is made up of beautiful ancient woodlands, open heath and grasslands, sports pitches, allotments, and even a rejuvenated historic cemetery down at the bottom of the park. It's rich in biodiversity, and it offers the most amazing views across the city and across into the Peak District beyond that as well. It has a master plan that sets out the vision for the park and the desire to make it a park that inspires people, inspires them to move and be more active, a park to connect people, connect them both with nature and their friends and family, but also a park that is connected with its local community, and also a park to last, a park that delivers right now, but also sets out a legacy of activity and enjoyment for years to come. The Places to Ride project is a key project we've got going on in the park at the moment, which aims to deliver part of the Parkwood Springs master plan. It seeks to significantly extend the mountain bike network across a greater area of the site. And I don't know whether anybody here is interested in mountain biking, but it already has the most amazing mountain bike trails on the site, and it's looking to have more of those and have them be better quality where they already exist. It is apparently known to people far beyond Sheffield borders as a great place to ride your mountain bike. It's not for me personally, but it's very popular with a large number of people. It will also improve standards on the site across the whole site, helping to bring the site up to the Sheffield standard, which is the standard that we want to have in all of our green spaces across the city. And it will provide a new community hub for everyone. Back to the point that I made in our earlier presentation about that Brew-Lou view and something to do. Well, there's already a view that's probably not rivaled in Sheffield. There is something to do if you're into walking your dog, or mountain biking if that's your bag. But what there isn't is any kind of toilet or catering kiosk facility, which does actually mean that some people can't go and spend a lot of time there. So the project is seeking to improve that and make it a better experience for all types of users. In doing the project, we're working closely with Sport England and working out how we can get through all of the funding red tape, obviously, that does exist. We're doing a lot of legal work. The site is so very vast that it has a large number of what we call legal titles on the site. So that is just the legal paperwork that sets out who owns that land, what you can and cannot do on that land. Just the mountain bike trails alone cross a number of titles. And we're in doing the work that we've done, we have discovered that some of them have quite restrictive covenants on them. That is something in the original sort of deed paperwork that says that you can do this, you can't do the other. So we're working through those, and we are getting ready to work with any bodies that we need to unpick what you can and can't do. That might include the Charity Commission if any of those titles are held in charitable trust. We don't actually know that for sure yet. The reason I'm coming to talk to you in particular is because we might need to bring future papers on this project, and we don't yet know where those papers will need to come. If it is a site that has got titles that are held in charitable trust, we may need to go to the Charity Committee, which might mean it doesn't come here. But it didn't feel right not talking to you guys as sort of the Parks Committee before we did any of that. So I just wanted to highlight that the things that we are working on at the moment, things that we're going to continue to work on with regard to that specific Places to Ride project, is that we're going to continue to unpick the legal documents associated with the site. That's not me, thankfully. That's the likes of David and his team that get the joy of doing that. We'll approach the Charity Commission if we need to, if we think that any of the land is held in charitable trust. We will bring any future decisions to the appropriate committee. That might be here, or it might be the Charities Committee, depending on what we find out about the land. And then obviously the really key one is that we continue to work to get this fantastic project literally on the ground in Parkwood Springs. So that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour. I'm happy to provide more information if helpful.
Thank you very much. Got a number of people indicating they want to speak. I'll start. Councillor McGowan.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. I don't know this park, so if it does come back here, can we have a site visit? Because it'll really help make decisions. And secondly, has it got a friends group or around it as well?
Yes, if you're interested, you can have a site visit, whether it's going to come back here or not, because actually it's a site that does encapsulate a lot of what Parks has to deal with when it's managing sites. So you might find that interesting regardless of whether or not we're going to come here. And actually in the point that was raised earlier by somebody, apologies, I can't remember who, about the training programme, there is a list of sort of things that we as Parks would like to train you guys, i.e. take you to show you what it is that we do. And yes, there is a very active and very good Friends of group that brings people in from a number of communities, because it's such a vast site. It does actually touch on a number of wards and a lot of different communities.
Councillor Price.
My playground when I was a lad. You've not mentioned the ski slope. Has that been dropped as a future proposal?
No. It's separate though. So this specific bike project is to be honest almost to the side of where the ski slope is. The ski slope work is still ongoing. It's actually been led by Tamika Whittaker in Property Services.
Councillor Little.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. I did visit the Friends last week on Thursday. They are only too pleased for everyone on this committee to come and visit them. So, and it is a spectacular place. I'm also aware, talking to the chairs of the Friends, that this area is the second only in size as a country park, inner city country park to Hyde Park. So I think that's something that we should, as a city, sort of sing a lot about, and therefore, you know, it needs the appropriate attention. I understand that there's a glitch has turned up about the wetland area at the bottom of the part of the area alongside the river. There's an access road there, and there was a pond type of area being designed for that. My understanding that there's a detail there in that they want the area to be a wetland which will attract a great many different species, and that the plans actually seem to have sort of overlooked that, and I'd like that to be revisited, please.
I'm not familiar with it, but I'll look into it absolutely, and I'll come back to you if that's okay.
Thank you.
No other questions? Oh, sorry, Councillor Hooper.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, in Greenside Woods have got a fantastic mountain bike provision. They had an event last month when thousands of people came. Just wondering about this site and car parking, because most of the people come in vans, bring the bikes along, so you'll need adequate car parking. You go through Greenside on a weekend, and up Woodhead Road there, the car park's full, overflowing on the main road through, and it is causing a problem. So no doubt when events or things happening up there, you will need adequate parking, or the residents up there are going to be up in arms. Thank you.
You're absolutely right. It's an oddity, isn't it, that to go and do cycling, people choose to or often have to drive. There is a car park. It is not particularly big, but with regard to the ski slope work that's been done, obviously access to the site is being looked at.
Okay, there's no other questions, so thank you for your report. I know we have a big workload, but I personally would like to see this coming to this committee. It sounds a very exciting project. Thank you. That was just for noting. So we're going on to item number 10, which is the application for Trailblazer status for new programme funding.
Thank you, Chair. This is an easy ask, actually, an easy recommendation. So what we want to do, we want to ask the committee for Sheffield to apply for Trailblazer status in the new government-funded programme, which was announced in the budget last year. There's 300 million available for 75 upper-tier local authorities. We've already been working with other local authorities and are part of a national focus group anyway. We're already doing a lot of work around moving the family centre into family hubs, so going from a 0 to 5 offer to a 0 to 19 and up to 25 for young adults with special educational needs and disabilities. So we're doing a lot of work around that. And our Start for Life services, as I explained before, are second to none. We've already got the UNICEF Gold Award. So if we do get to be a trailblazer, that would give us priority to access for this funding as well. So to me, it's a no-brainer. So yeah, that's what we'd like you to recommend, that we go for trailblazer status.
Councillor Downing.
Yeah, being as we don't get much from the government in this city, I think it's a great chance for us, an opportunity for us to go for this funding, and I would certainly support it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Alston.
Thank you. I suppose I'm going to start off with the depressing question. What happens if we don't succeed? Because we need these services for our population. And I hear what you're saying about us having good services, but actually over recent years, the accessibility of hubs for young parents has become much, much lower. I know it's never been good where I am. It's an hour's bus ride on 2 buses to get to the centre where you're meant to go for advice with your baby. It's not doable. So we really do need the investment. Do we have a detailed plan of how we would spend the money? And as I said, what happens if we don't succeed?
We will succeed.
Good, I love the confidence.
However, you're right, it is depressing, and if we don't succeed, we are already making great strides to do this. We work really well with our partners. We are connecting our voluntary and community sector organisations. We're working with our youth services colleagues. We're connecting all the services together to create these family hubs. As I say, our Great Start for Life offer, we're looking at funding from supporting families already to come into that offer to help and support with our work with midwives and health visitors already. So we just need to keep connecting the services. You're right, resources are limited, funding's limited, so we'll go after every funding opportunity we can, and not just from local government. We're looking at working with our voluntary and community sector colleagues to see if they can access funding. We're also working with the Integrated Care Board to look at additional funding as well.
If I can just come back. Do we actually have, I'm sorry because I've read this, I've forgotten the timescales, but if we get this funding, do we actually have to provide, in order to bid for it, a detailed plan of what we're going to do with that? And have we got that detailed plan in place? What sort of timescales are we looking at here?
We don't have the detailed plan in place yet because national government haven't come out with the metrics. We know what we're working to, but we will have a detailed plan. If we're successful with the funding, we will have to have, it will be part of our bid. So, and we're looking at it, it sounds like it's going to be October when the funding is available. So Trailblazer status in July and then the funding in October. That's what we're currently working to. Those are the timescales, but as you know, national government changes the goalposts occasionally.
Okay, I have Councillor Hooper, then Councillor Little.
Thank you, Chair. Question regarding how much money, sort of range-wise, would Sheffield be getting from this Trailblazer? And secondly, would there be any additional cost ongoing for the council here to pay for this? And another question would be regarding the 0 to 5, which is the old show start. Would that include pre-birth as well? So, you know, the maternity cover from pregnancy, through to pregnancy, and then through to 0 to 5. Thank you.
We don't actually know how much money we will get. There's a breakdown in the paper of all of these. This is from the Department of Levelling Up, the Department of Education and the Department of Health, and we could get bits of money out of all these boxes. And we don't have any clear indication yet, but it could be a significant amount of money. So we just have to make that bid. applying for Trailblazer status is nil cost to the council. We just want to get in there. We want to show national government we're really interested, and we're showing them the great work we're already doing across the city with limited resources, because we already work with pre-birth in all our centres.
Yeah, it's very, very limited because of the 7 centres, and like Sue says, for their area, people again in high green area of deprivation have to catch 2 buses out of our area into Parson Cross. It's very difficult for young mums to get because there's 2 buses and then about a 500-yard walk. That's fine probably in the summer, but in the winter with a pram and a young child, it's not possible. So yeah, we'd look forward to the centres and then the hubs. Again, the hubs are really important for local people to access these services. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Little.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I reflect on what's been said by Alan and Sue, that access to, children's services are limited for many people in the city, even within sort of the inner city like Walkley, where we've lost local community buses. So I think, would it be possible to look at the suggestion, what the government proposer, to sort of ask for very local provision so that people can take their child to, walk their child to a centre and get a referral or some way of getting access, because this is the big problem. People tell me, oh, they'd like those services, but they can't get to them. So it's, it's rather academic. I have a second question, but I'll ask.
We do a lot of outreach, and we are looking at extending that outreach. So yes, there are 7 registered sites because family centres are still within an Ofsted inspection framework. But we have other outreach sites that are available and should be more locally accessible, and we are working with parents and consulting them about actually where do we need those outreach sites? Are they in the right place? Do we need more of those sites? How do we resource them? How can we work with our partners to resource them? What does that service need to look like? During COVID, we got really innovative, and we do a lot of classes online that people can access. Even baby massage is online if you want to, and we are still running online classes that people can access. During the summer months, we do pram walks in local parks and things. So there are an awful lot of services with a very small resource. And that is why really we need to go after this national funding to increase our services to everybody across the city. And your second question?
Yes, I looked at the www.gov.uk site in here. I do recommend people to look at it. It's fascinating, and there is a lot of money there, and we do see it within there, the government's commitment to that. But my concern there is the timescale. I looked at the document this morning, and I understand it's 2025 that's when the money will be available. When is that correct, or have I misread it?
I think it's for 3 years up to 2025, so from 2022 up to 2025, so over the next 3 years.
Excuse me, would you put your microphone on, please?
Sorry, Chair. You didn't help me out then. Sorry. The funding is available. It's a 3-year funding programme. So it's a significant investment into family hub services to the city.
Thank you very much. Is there any other questions? No, thank you for the report. Yes.
Sorry, Chair, something's just sprung to my mind. How does this overlap with what you're doing through the Children's Committee? Are they seeing this as well? Because obviously some of this is partly their remit, so I'm just trying to clarify.
We'll take the paper just so they have sight of it to all the other committees that it impacts.
Yeah, to make this final question, please, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd very much like to see the local communities being involved in this outreach, the scheme that you have been done in the past. I know that could have a significant impact on local community, you know, in local neighbourhoods. It would help the whole community, not just the people visiting the centre, these centres. So I would very much encourage to be more engagement with local communities, perhaps centred on GP surgeries or any medical facility within the public facility within the area. Is that going to happen?
Yes, we're looking into all of that, Councillor Little, and your LAC managers are actually working very closely with Helen Lomas, who is the service manager for the family centres, to look at just this as well. So we're trying to connect and join all the dots so that all services are involved in working with us to create family hubs across Sheffield.
Thank you very much. On that basis then, the recommendation is the approval for Sheffield to progress to the application stage for Trailblazer status. Are we all agreed? That's unanimous, and we wish you well with that one. Thank you. Item 11 is the financial position and monitoring report. Can I hand over to Brian?
Thanks very much, Chair. So this is the month one financial position of the council with a bit of background and a bit of forward look really to the budget process for 23-24. I'll start by saying that the report you've got before you is very similar to all the reports of this matter that are going to all the committees and that went to Strategy and Resources. So the front half and the back half of the report are identical. Every committee is getting the same information, just so members are aware of that. So members that are on other committees will have seen some of this before. The part in the middle is obviously the bit that's specific to this committee. And as far as that goes, this committee is reporting a small underspend. So nothing much to say on that other than please keep your eye on it and keep going. Thank you. But there is some one-off money that's underpinning some of this committee's work this year, which you'll obviously need to think about as when you come to the budget process for next year. In terms of the report, it sets out very clearly that committees and indeed officers are not allowed to overspend without the requisite approvals from Strategy and Resources or full council, and committees are required to live within the budget, which you obviously currently are doing, so thank you for that. The outturn for last year was almost a £20 million overspend. The position did improve quite a bit towards the end of the year due to one-off money, I'm afraid, though, so it wasn't an ongoing benefit that we got towards the end of last year. That was one-off money really from the NHS right in the last few weeks of the financial year. 20 million is obviously not something that's sustainable for the organisation to live with, so we've really got to get ourselves back on an even footing, and I'll talk about the process for doing that in the next few minutes. We allocated as an organisation £70 million of reserves to manage the finances of the council and to give us a bit of time and space to get back onto an even keel. The pandemic did leave us with some fairly difficult structural overspends in a couple of key services, and we're basically giving ourselves a bit of time and space to work through that and to try and get ourselves back to a balanced position. 20 million of that 70 obviously used to fund the overspend for last year. We also used 15 of it to balance this year's budget. So the budget that we set for 22-23 was a deficit budget that was balanced off by using 15 million of reserves. So already half of the reserves are allocated. The report contains a chart that essentially shows how the council has prioritised investment over the last 10 years. And the chart very clearly shows that we've prioritised investment in the key social services, children's and adults. Investment in those services has gone up significantly and above inflation every year for the last 10 years. And more significantly in more recent years, about 8% per year for the last few years. That's been at the expense of other services, and you can see that the line is more or less flat, slightly dipping, in fact. And that just reflects the priority that members have put on various investments in different kinds of services. As at month one, we're forecasting an overspend for the organisation overall of £18.7 million. That is largely due to difficulties in a few key areas in delivering budget implementation plans, so the savings that were approved at council to deliver savings to balance the budget with that 15 million use of reserves. There are some pressures in there relating to energy costs, which we are managing to contain mostly this year, but that will obviously become an issue, as was mentioned earlier. All over the council, energy cost inflation is something that's going to affect us, particularly as we move into the 23-24 budgeting process. Looking forward to 23-24, the position remains challenging. The Strategy and Resources Committee are going to get a report on the 5th of July setting out the medium-term financial analysis. That will look forward. We're expecting a fairly significant budget gap as part of that. There's an illustration of what it might look like in there. That position evolves daily at the moment. It's a little bit better than it is in the report there, but still by no means a balanced position. That's going to require some significant work from each committee to live within its budget. The Strategy and Resources Committee will receive a recommendation from me on how each committee should balance its budget. In other words, what the principles should be. That'll be for the 5th of July report, and I know, Chair, you'll be a member of that committee and will be at that meeting for that discussion. The timetable that's set out, though, will require this committee to work over the course of the summer to develop proposals to achieve its budget to come up with a balanced position for 23-24. So the budget timetable calls for a report back to this committee at the September meeting, setting out how that will be done. That will then roll up into a report to Strategy and Resources, so all the committees will do the same thing during September, and the Strategy and Resources Committee will then be able to take an overview of the options that the various policy committees have put forward to balance their own positions. It'll be for the Strategy and Resources Committee to then decide whether it wants to make any alterations to that, whether it wants to ask some committees to go and do some more work or whatever they want to do, to be perfectly honest, with a view to getting a final balanced position back to Strategy and Resources on the 5th of December. That will be critical to hit the timescales for the 2 council meetings in the new year. First of all, on the 1st of February, Housing will need to set the housing rent at council on the 1st of Feb. And then on the 1st of March, the council tax setting council meeting will take place as it normally does. I think that's all I needed to cover from the report, Chair, so obviously happy to take any questions the committee has.
Thank you very much. Councillor Little.
Thank you for your report. At the last full council, we committed as a council to maximise our drawing into the city any government grant or schemes that are available. Will those be reported to this committee, for example, where we've got a chance of bringing in more money or providing better services, as we just seen with in the last report? That seems to be a way of buffering us against the worst of what's going to hit us. What will you be doing with that? Will you be providing us with a list of possible investment opportunities for using central government monies?
Thanks for the question. I think you just had an example of where there are opportunities for us to bid for money. Bidding rarely comes without terms and conditions, and I'm sure we'll look forward to the report that, if we are successful, looks at what the consequences of accepting any government offer are. I'll be looking forward to working with the officers who support this committee to do just that, Councillor Little, and obviously any ideas and suggestions that members do have, we'll be very happy to explain, or explore, sorry, not explain.
Councillor Price.
Yeah, energy. We're trying to get to the bottom of this for the last 3 months. Being as out this building, Ponsford, City Hall, Central Library, all the major are being heated from our waste to energy plant. That's not gone up. Our collecting waste and burning it, creating steam for all these buildings remain the same. It's also providing electricity to the national grid. Somebody's either making lots of money out of us, or somebody's saving lots of money for us. Can you explain where that heat's going and who's getting the benefit from it?
I'm going to have to come back to you with a better answer than the one I'm going to give. because I don't understand the full dynamics of the contract we've got with Veolia as it applies to the energy recovery facility. Their costs will have gone up because we use
Source hasn't.
I don't think if I understand it, and again I will go out and find more on this, but I don't think the waste burns itself. I think it needs a bit of help, and the cost of doing that will have gone up. There is a contract in place with Veolia as to how that is treated, but you are right. I suspect the costs or the price inflation that we're seeing for some of our facilities is not quite the same as it is for the general market. However, the sort of things we are seeing significant cost increase from our other facilities that are not within the district energy network. So we've heard about the cremators, for example, across the council house estate and the housing estate. You know, we see issues across that board as well.
Any other questions? Councillor Little, you had a comment about bereavements. You said you wanted to bring back to this item. About reporting.
Yes, sorry. Yeah, the issue again was about the rising cost of energy and its impact on inflation, and how we need to be very careful about and monitor that very carefully, because it's going to go up and up and up. And I am very concerned. And I'm sure we all are.
I assume there is a cost for this monitoring in officer time. Is there an optimum cycle for monitoring costs?
So I mean, we do keep an eye. We formally monitor budgets on a monthly basis. We can't frankly afford to leave it any longer than that, given where we are. We intend to return to this committee. It might be with fairly short updates. It might even not require a presentation from officers, but we'll keep this committee up to date every time it meets with the budget position that applies to it. If we find and if we see that things are getting out of hand and need action, either myself or one of my colleagues will be here to talk to you about it. That may require the committee to consider action in year. I'm not seeing any signs that that's necessary today, by the way, but you know, let's not close that door. As part of the budget setting process, though, I think there will be work for this committee to do to work with officers in the service to really get under the costs of some of the services that you talked about, Councillor Little, and to set the principles for how charges are going to respond to the costs that drive those services. It's very difficult for us in our current financial situation for council taxpayers to subsidise some of the services that are part of this committee's remit. And I think it's incumbent on us all to try and explore ways in which we can effectively make as many of these services as possible, and I include some of the ones that we talked about in terms of parks, as independent of council tax and business rates funding as we possibly can.
Thank you.
Alston.
Thank you. Just a point of clarity, if I can, about the budget timetable. In the sort of second point, you've put the policy committees to develop budget proposals July to September. But obviously, we're not meeting again until September. Is that development? Do you expect that largely to be an officer-based development, or involving just the chairs, or?
I think that's for you to decide, to be quite honest. So at the Strategy and Resources Committee meeting on the 5th of July, that will effectively set out the budget challenge, if you want, that this committee's got to try and meet. It'll be for the chair deputy to decide how they want to do that. It's absolutely not just an officer process. I expect it to be a conversation between officers and members of the committee, and you'll need to agree how you want that to work. But over the course of the summer, and you may want to have public meetings as part of that. You may decide to do that as briefing meetings. I suppose it kind of depends on the size of the challenge and the options that officers put forward and the extent to which all members of the committee want to be involved. But that's one for you, Chair, I think.
You wanted to add something, John?
Thank you, Chair. Just to build on Ryan's point, in the Education, Children and Families Committee last week, we agreed to work with Chair, Vice Chair, Group Spokesperson and some officers through the summer, but broadening the invitation to other members who wanted to be involved directly or to feed their views in, but work around those lead member diaries arranged, because if we tried to set another meeting, say in 3 weeks' time for everybody, we'd invariably get apologies. So we decided the best approach was to work with the Chair, Vice Chair, Group Spokesperson, and then extend invitations out to have those conversations, and those meetings are being scheduled over the summer.
With that in mind then, are you generally in consensus that that's the way we'd like to work?
Yeah, I think that would be very useful, Chair. I mean, I do think that maybe prior to the September meeting, maybe there needs to be a specific invitation to a briefing meeting, even if everybody can't make it. But just so, because looking at this budget, we've got a lot of, by council standards, relatively small items, but a lot of items. So I think it'd be useful to have that extra briefing. Thank you.
Can we make sure that happens, please? Thank you. I have a question for you, Ryan. Reading your figures, and it's about this 1.3 potential shortfall, are you in effect saying we have got to find 1.3 million in the year after the next budgets to maintain that level of community support?
I'm going to ask Lorraine to answer that because it's actually within her service area, so she knows a lot more about it than me.
No, it is a one-off payment, and we've got temporary staff in place that we've increased support, because during Covid we've found a lot more need. Because we were doing doorstep deliveries of food and things, we were coming across a lot more need. There's increased mental health need, so we increased the service from well, what was MHCLG, that is now DLUCH. So what we're doing, that service is just temporary, and we're looking at other funding streams to support us with that ongoing.
Thank you. If there's no further questions, this is an item for recommendation for approval. There's 5 items. Am I able to take them all at once? Or do I have to do individually?
You can take them all at once and see if you've got approval. If people want to vote on them individually, you can then do it that way.
Okay, the committee has recommended to 1, note the council's challenging financial position and the month-one position. 2, note the budget timetable set out in this report, including the requirement for the committee to plan to develop budget proposals over the course of the summer. 3, note that the Strategy and Resources Committee was recommended at its 31st of May 2022 meeting to require any policy committee that is forecasting an overspend on their budget to develop an action plan to address the overspend in year, and ask the Finance Subcommittee to monitor both the development of the required action plans and deliveries against them. 4, continue closely to manage and monitor expenditure in line with budget expectations and ensure forecasts represent current financial conditions. And finally, 5, ensure that the spend of the community response team that is underfunded for 23-24 is managed with this in mind. Are we all agreed?
Sorry, Chair, could I ask a supplementary question? Is that possible at this point? You are. I am allowed. Yes, it was concerning the issue I brought up earlier about the council's got a commitment to seek government funds and projects that are out there, and to, so we can maximise that income. Obviously, as Councillor Price has says, we need to look at these things carefully and make sure we don't commit to something that ties us into an unsustainable future. But I'd like that to be a recommendation that we continue to search throughout the year on sources of funding outside of with the council, as per council policy passed at the last full council.
Yeah, if you want to put that forward as a resolution then, as an additional...
As an addition, yes.
That can go as an addition if it can be made on the existing information. I think it's effectively repeating council policy, so I don't think there's an issue with it as such. It may not be that every potential opportunity comes to this committee.
Yes.
Timescales don't always allow that, but as a reiteration by this policy committee of the council's position, I don't think that's an issue.
Are people happy with that addition? And can I suggest that myself, the deputy and the officers come up with a set of words that reflects your thoughts? On that basis, are we all agreed on this recommendation? That motion is then carried. Thank you. The only final item is to note the meeting date of the next meeting, which will be on the 19th of September, but I suspect we will be seeing each other a few more times over the summer. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.